Now, let's take a look at some tips for providing verbal feedback. Now, let's take a look at some do's and don'ts. Let's first go over some do's. Number one, pay attention to how often you give verbal confirmation and switch up your word choices. You don't want to be repetitive, right? You don't want to sound like you're a robot who's just reacting to their feedback. You want to be mentally present and give verbal confirmation. But obviously, you don't want to say the same words over and over again. Switch it up. Second is demonstrate your honest reaction while being aware of relational and professional dynamics at play. Simply put, know your role and respond accordingly. Right? If there are boundaries set because of for professional reasons, respect those boundaries. Third is use commonly accepted verbal confirmations, such as, yes, huh, wow, no kidding, that's great, or I hear that. Obviously, these words can be switched around. If there's a certain word that you and the person you're speaking to commonly use, feel free to use those phrases. But these words are verbal confirmations. Next, paraphrase and ask clarifying questions to make sure you understand the speaker's intent. If you are curious or confused about something that they said, ask for reassurance. Ask for them to repeat what they said if they could, right? Or say that you weren't able to hear that well. It is always okay to ask, say, hey, can you repeat that? I didn't catch all of that. Or just ask to reaffirm what they said, because that shows that you were trying to pay attention. Just unfortunately, you weren't able to process all of that information. Next, follow up and expand on ideas shared by others and give credit to the idea originator. So this rule applies when you're in groups of like 2 plus. If someone comes up with a great point, make note of that. Like, for example, if Sally makes a great point, give credit to Sally. Oh, Sally brought up this amazing point the other day, and then bring attention to it. Not only does Sally benefit from you giving verbal confirmation that it was her idea, now the entire group of people that you're speaking to understands that, oh, hey, you're one of those individuals who respect and validates people's ideas and also brings attention to them. Last tip is use the speaker's name to show care and interest in them, but don't overdo it. So obviously, it goes without saying that people appreciate it when you refer to them as their name, right? Because obviously, you grew up with an emotional attachment to your name, or that's how you've been referred. Or if there's a specific preference of how you would like to be referred as, of course, make note to it. But one thing that you can do to be an effective communicator when it comes to conversations is give people respect. Refer to them as their name. Now, let's take a look at some of the don'ts when it comes to providing verbal feedback. The first don't is don't mirror, mock, or try to perform the verbal cues of the communication norms of the speaker. All right. It simply put, it don't make fun of them, right, by mimicking what they're doing. Unless obviously the context allows for it, but most situations there's no need to make fun of someone because it demeans them, and as a result, the person who is being mimicked or mocked might not appreciate it. Number two, don't interrupt the speaker. I think this is very important, right? When it comes to conversation, when it comes to listening skills, remember, it's not about you, it's about the other person. If you want to show that you're interested in what the other person has to say, then actually listen to everything they have to say before making a comment. Next is don't talk over the speaker. A lot of people, one tendency that they have is they tend to raise their voice at a higher volume just to overshadow someone else that's talking. And that could be attention seeking. And which, again, if you've been one of those, if you've fallen victim to one of these instances, then you know how difficult and how upsetting it can be when someone talks over you, especially when they're raising their voice just to kind of drown you out. And obviously, that feels like you, as the person who's being talked over or the victim, feels like your thoughts and your comments aren't as valuable as someone else. So, one thing that you can control is, again, don't do that to someone else. Listen and don't talk over someone else. Next is don't provide excessive verbalized feedback. Think about providing feedback for main points or new information, not a collection of words leading up to the point. Next is don't overperform or fake interest. And this is one thing that I think a lot of people need to realize is that people are smart. People can have this sense that someone is being disingenuous or just trying to make an effort to laugh just to laugh for like maybe attention seeking purposes, but like for various reasons. But there's no need, right? And one thing a lot of people do end up doing is just being a bit too much, exaggerating their laughter, exaggerating their claps. If that's genuinely how you feel and you genuinely are excited or you genuinely find a joke hilarious, then of course. But again, this is more focused on over exaggerating, because if you tend to over exaggerate your gestures or your verbal feedback, it can turn people off. Next is don't take over the conversation so that the other person's points get lost. And this is one thing that a lot of people do incorrectly, is that they treat conversations like a competition. That my point is better than yours, therefore I'm going to reinforce why my point is better than yours. If you're in a debate, in an argument, sure, right? I guess that's a little bit understandable. Still a little disrespectful, right? Because again, if you're in a legitimate argument, you want to allow each individual to have their respective amount of time to get their thoughts across. Let the conversation just flow naturally. It's not a competition. Next tip is don't repeat someone else's idea as your own with only a few word changes. If you're going to paraphrase or borrow someone else's idea, just give them credit. There's nothing wrong with giving credit. Next is don't engage in one-upping when sharing experiences. The best conversationalists and the best individuals who provide great feedback are those who listen first, process the information, understand what their audience needs are and how to phrase it correctly, then deliver it.